I have no idea yet. Oh, I am live. Hi, good morning. It is my second hypothermia treatment in about my second hypothermia treatment is happening in about 20 minutes. So I'm gonna make this quick. I'm sorry that I haven't been updating as much as I would have liked to, but to be honest with you, I think I have this the other way. The sun's in my face. The internet went out, so it's been kind of frustrating on the level of wanting to see my kids and I guess being spoiled. But yeah, I'm gonna get this chair. For some reason my eyes look too bright. I'm in my pajamas. Oh, it's still too bright, darn it. Hold on. Hmm. Right, thank you. I am not set up for this because I wasn't planning on doing this. Hope I don't wake anybody. Okay, there we go. So it's a little bit better. Hopefully you can hear me and I can see into the camera. Sorry, I'm like sweaty balls. So my goal today is that I get hot as AF, hot as fuck. Yeah, so I'm pretty excited. I was very nervous over the last couple of days, mostly because I've had some family dynamics change, but I don't want to really get into it until I'm ready to talk about it. It's been really overwhelming and took a toll on my body. But I'm happy today. I want to just read a little bit of this book. This is Mary Beth Pfeiffer. She's an investigative reporter who's written a couple books, but this is the first epidemic of climate change, Lyme. And I just feel like I actually wanted to read something else, but I couldn't find it. And I had planned on reading this to you guys. It's the introduction of this book because I think you should all get it. I think it's imperative that people start to educate themselves on Lyme disease because it's the fastest growing epidemic in the world, and it doesn't discriminate. I'm really passionate about obviously getting better, but I think now that I've seen this whole big crazy conspiracy that's happened and that I was misdiagnosed for like over 20 years. My own father had Lyme disease and he didn't treat it because it wasn't covered. And that in turn, his doctor's pretty convinced triggered the onset of MS. So maybe he wouldn't have struggled so much with his MS if he had been treated with the Lyme disease properly. And that's a whole nother story. So anyway, I'm just going to read this because I find it to be really fascinating. It's an unbiased approach of looking into Lyme disease. It's all scientific, but this is a woman who I find to be just brilliant, and I've listened to her on a bunch of podcasts. So I finally got the book. Okay, ready? And I have to be quick because I really should be meditating. Okay, on the day after Christmas in 2012, I took a walk with my 33-year-old son in an old cornfield that long ago morphed with changing patterns of agriculture into a gently tendered meadow we all know. This 9-acre patch of earth across the dead end lane from our home in upstate New York has a rare and wonderful feature that we have worked with the corporation neighbors to sustain. A mowed trail around its perimeter and that allows access even when summer mustard, milkweed, and goldenrod are 4 feet high and the blackberry brambles profuse. As we often do, we took with each, oh my gosh, I had a really hard time reading. I didn't realize this, so bear with me. My eyesight and my brain to malfunction is not that good. As we often do, we took with us that day coterie of mismatched family dogs. I think that's the right way to say that. A Shih Tzu, Chihuahua, Springer Spaniel, and a Beijing rescue that we call a boxer. The day, unusually balmy in the last week of the year that had gone down to the warmest in 135 years of weather history, followed only but considerably by the year before. The temperature had topped out at 55 degrees Fahrenheit that December 26th. It had reached into the mid-60s on Christmas and hit 72 near Poughkeepsie the day before. For the time of year, day temperature at or near freezing would have been more particular in here, in the Hudson Valley, 100 miles north of New York City. Instead, it has been so warm that buds have sprouted in one neighbor's garden, crocuses peaked in another's. When we came back from our short walk, what we did has become a New York State routine, practicing from spring through fall, but not for the winter. We checked the dogs for ticks. When we were done, we had picked 21 black-headed ticks from the scruffs of our pups, each about the size of a freckle, with all one goal in mind: to latch onto a warm body and suck into the blood. When I moved into this rural country in upstate New York 30 years ago, such things did not happen. Ticks certainly did not show up in December, were indeed rare, and if seen, were usually on the easier to spot tick variety, which infrequently carried Rocky Mountain spotted fever. They did not pack the potential arsenal of infection of the small, ambiguous black-headed ticks of today. Every year, the list of diseases found within a tick grows longer, including new bacteria, viral, and parasitic pathogens. These infections have changed daily life in the country in which I live, and they've altered the courses of many, particularly where they go unrecognized for weeks or months. Mention Lyme disease at a gathering here, and nearly everyone has a story. The odd rash, fever, occasional palsy, meningitis, joint pain of early stages, the sometimes crippling arthritic memory loss, depression, numbness, and fatigue of the advanced disease. Even the rare infection that can kill. In a town near me, Lyme heart disease, whatever, in which bacterium quickly cripples the heart, claiming a 17-year-old boy and a 38-year-old father of 3 within 5 months. A woman at 91 was an active gardener, died after being bitten by the tick and contracting another common tick-borne disease, babesiosis. Oh my goodness. Black-headed ticks have taken up residence in half the continents of the United States counties, spreading west, north, south, from Connecticut town, which Lyme disease was named in the 1970s. I lived in Old Lyme 71 through 75, if you did not know that. It's like some unchecked alga boom. These 8-legged have turned childhood from time to explore nature to the time to fear. My 7-year-old grandson has been warned since he could walk. Don't brush up against the grasses at the edge of the trail. Don't venture into the wheels. Tuck socks into pants. Sit for the repellent. Check yourself. And remind mommy to do so also. I feel like I had to say this because I was starting to feel like I was this crazy Lyme person, crazy Lyme mom. I've also been, crazy mom who's putting sunblock on my kids, but I feel like this is something that's really important for you to hear, that this should become a daily practice in your household, as like you put on sunblock, but this time you're going to have to do this year round. I know a lot of people don't put sunblock on year round, but if you live anywhere where there could be potential of the children playing in grass or bushes or anything, tick repellent, you can get a lot of non-toxic stuff out there. I'll give you some tips as I go along over the next few days. Okay, then pray we see the tick and pity the parent who doesn't know to look. Guidance counselors and teachers have told me the most frequently infected missing months, sometimes years of school, because the ticks went unseen or symptoms were misconstrued. But happenstance is not the only reason that cases are missed or treatment delayed. I have learned many patients have suffered needlessly in the States, Canada, England, France, Germany, and many other countries because of how Lyme disease has been framed in the United States American medical journals. It stems from America, you guys. This is crazy. I had no idea, or I would have known that I didn't have half Lyme disease. I had a few bands, so I didn't have Lyme disease, they told me. over the course of a few years. Well, guess what? You can't be half pregnant. So now I know that you need to ask your doctor to go to a pediatrician and they do your blood work, which quite honestly, most of them are not going to do accurate blood work for you, but we can save that for another video. But when you do, ask them to do the two-tier testing, just regardless. If you have a feeling, if your child is symptomatic, trust your gut that not all doctors have the capacity to know about this disease. This is so much deeper than pointing the blame at a doctor. It's really like they don't know. They're also scared of losing their licenses. The ones that do know are scared of losing their licenses, and testing is inaccurate. You can't have a band or two of Lyme and not have Lyme disease. So anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there. This illness has been minimized, underestimated, and politicized to the point that doctors fear treating it aggressively with cheap, common drugs, antibiotics. I began to write about Lyme disease as an investigative reporter for the Dutchess County, New York newspaper in 2012. I had intended to write 1 or 2 stories about a prevalent local disease, focusing on its origins of growth and management by health officials. But Lyme disease proved to be the story far beyond the parameters I envisioned. Over a period of 4 years, I studied the politics, paper trail, and scientific literature. I rested on the patients and their advocates. Many of their assertions, I concluded, were true. Believe it or not, we're not crazy. It was true. Decades-old testing protocols failed to diagnose many people with the disease. The risk of over-testing, the falsely diagnosing people with Lyme was exaggerated at the expense of cases missed and symptoms dismissed. Original figures did not reflect the epidemic scope and were soon revised tenfold. Human trials concluded that short-term antibiotics eradicated the bug, while animal and test tube studies showed they didn't. And then there was the politics of Lyme. Doctors who prescribed repeated courses of antibiotics, standard in other diseases, faced professional disciplinary charges due to legal fees and sometimes suspension or loss of their licenses. Research was discredited, ignored, or relegated to the second-tier journals when it challenged prevailing dogma. Scientists who were invested in the benign view of Lyme disease used access to elite journals to uphold the status quo, and little money was available for treatment trials because the medical system purported to have the answers to Lyme disease care, and yet some of 10 to 20% of the people infected annually with Lyme disease, estimated at 380,000 Americans in 2015, have symptoms that linger for months and sometimes years after treated. The United States CDC calls the condition post-treatment Lyme disease syndrome, and it affects multitudes of people as disease-toting ticks move around the world. Lyme disease is rife in most countries, in every country in Western Europe. It's in Russia, China, former Soviet satellites, and officially unrecognized in Australia, too. The one small study, half the ticks in 2 parks. In one small study, this really got me. Half the ticks in 2 parks in New York City harbored the Lyme disease pathogen. In Chicago Park, oxide ticks, some laden with Lyme pathogen, outnumbered every other tick carried by migrating birds in 2010. 5 years earlier, there were none in the northwestern suburb of Beijing. 1 in 20 residents tested positive in a Chinese study that said quite remarkably, undiagnosis of early Lyme disease and physical damage at advanced stage are a huge problem in this area. Listen, this goes on for another 2 pages, but I gotta run. I gotta get a thermometer at my butt, and I gotta go sweat my balls off. All right. Anyway, I love you guys. Peace out. Have a great day. And, don't forget to put on your tick repellent and check for ticks daily.